Hi, welcome to my video essay. Right off the bat, I will acknowledge, yes, I'm filming this on my phone. Also, I am well aware that this is completely unlike anything I've ever posted on my YouTube channel before. This has absolutely no precedent as far as my YouTube content goes. I'm sure that the vast majority of people who are subscribed to my YouTube channel are here for my BuzzFeed Unsolved related content, and the very few that might be subscribed specifically for Psych related content, because I have posted some fan videos and stuff before, still surely did not ever necessarily expect anything like this, especially not anything with my face in it. However, if you're following me on my Tumblr, then you are well acquainted with this topic, and particularly how passionate I am about it, and now you get to see all the things that I've ranted about before, but all in one place, and with a lot more organization. And of course with the added bonus of it actually coming out of my face and mouth, instead of just words on a screen. I don't want to make this intro too long, because I'm going to be talking for a very long time regardless, but I feel like it makes sense to officially introduce myself, so just so you know, my name's Sebastian, I like to go by Bass, and I'm a gay dude. And I feel like you should also have some context for my relationship to the topic at hand. Just, bear with me. I got into Psych in May of 2015. I have watched the show in full 3 times since then. The first time I binged it all in 1 week. And after the 2 full rewatches, I have rewatched many episodes a lot more times, and a lot of episodes, due to personal reasons, I have left at the 3 watches. The personal reasons are I really can't fucking stand some of the episodes, for reasons that you will probably discover throughout this essay. And for the past 3 years, Psych has taken up the vast majority of all fan content I've made, which includes over 450,000 words worth of fanfic, over 46 fics, one of which I actually wound up taking off the internet and turning into an original novel and publishing with all the names changed and stuff, and I kind of regret that because I did it during a period of all the passion being drained from my life due to extenuating circumstances, but that's how much I've written. And I've also made a habit over the past 1.5 years or so of posting at least 1 piece of Psych content per day, whether art, fic, meta, meme, graphic, video, etc. So, not to flex or anything, but I am literally one of the very few people consistently posting Psych content at all. Except, well, I guess I could not tell you how much Shules content is being posted because I love myself too much to even step foot into the tag, and quite honestly, I have blocked all blogs I've seen that regularly post it. But the point is, I am, without a doubt, that bitch. I know it's ultimately petty. I know that Psych ended in 2014. But I have more or less devoted the past 3.5 years of my life to this show and its characters. I have never been more consistently invested in, nor predominantly attached to, any one single piece of media other than Psych, which is especially crazy considering the one huge glaring flaw that the show has that fills me with such rage and fury every time I think about it. And I have told you all of this just to make sure that you all believe and understand that if anyone is qualified, due to sheer familiarity with the source material and presence within the fan base, to rant on camera for likely up to an hour, if not longer, about all of that rage and fury, it is me. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you've watched Psych in its entirety, then you know that the endgame romance for our protagonist, Shawn Spencer, is with Juliet O'Hara, aka And yes, I will be censoring that word for the rest of the video, because it is garbage for many reasons, and I have organized those reasons into 3 general reasons. 1, it is heteronormative in a way that is not just boring and unrealistic, but also disgustingly misogynistic. 2, it's a straight up just super unhealthy relationship, even outside of the misogyny. 3, it screws up the balance of the whole show, and is thematically so stupidly out of place when the answers to bringing real thematic symmetry to Psych were in plain sight. So obviously I'm going in that order. Let's get into heteronormativity. For anyone who isn't familiar with the term, heteronormativity is the belief that heterosexuality is neutral and the default. In the context of TV and movies, it is the notion that het relationships are the only relationships that you can expect. Worse yet, it's the idea that because het relationships are the default, little to no effort is actually needed to sell the idea of any given het romance to the audience. And because of that, a man and a woman on a TV romance will often have much less actual chemistry, on-screen bonding, etc. than the man has with any given other male character at all. And frankly, I would love to say that the same goes for the woman and her close relationships with other women, but in many cases, including this one, that's yet another problem within the problem. The complete lack of other women. So right away, with the very notion of Shawn and Juliet as a romance, it's just so cookie-cutter and lazy and boring. You have the main character, Shawn, the white, presumably cis man, and his love interest is a white, blonde, presumably cis woman, who is in fact the only main female character who is romantically available. That is, within an acceptable age range, not married, and not related to him. So, from the heteronormative perspective, there's pretty much no doubt from the moment they meet, and especially as the show goes on to only ever give Shawn one other, obviously temporary girlfriend, that he and Juliet will wind up endgame. And yet, the will they, won't they is still needlessly pushed for 4.5 seasons.
Okay, do we know each other?
Yes. You were the girl who stole my seat.
But, okay. While I cannot personally see the appeal in a relationship that from first glance has already been done a million times before, and especially not one which leaves not a single shred for doubt that they will indeed get together, and therefore there's no suspense but just a bunch of prolonging of the inevitable, being boring and overdone isn't, unfortunately, a crime. And in their defense, Shawn and Juliet's actors began dating in real life soon after meeting on set in Season 1, and while it is an awful idea to base a fictional TV relationship on real-life relationships, which obviously I've never been a part of that, but I feel like that's just kind of common sense. But even so, it is understandable based on that they would want to go in that direction if they weren't already planning on doing so. Though, you'd think that if you wanted to do a romance between the main male character and the one female character in a show, that you'd at least recognize how lazy that looks and put in some effort to make them seem really compatible, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Except when you're relying on heteronormativity to sell a romance, that's not as necessary. So they didn't. In fact, they made it pretty clear that Shawn is not Juliet's type.
You can't give me one?
I can think of many.
Is one of them that you're looking forward to giving him sponge baths in the near future?
I happen to find his age and his maturity appealing. He's distinguished and virile, and most importantly, he knows who he is. And that is attractive.
And that he just doesn't understand her or things that are important to her.
This flowery crap actually works on you?
If you had read the book, you would understand, Shawn. This man has actual insight to the psyche of a woman.
I saw all the Emmanuel movies, including the one where she changed races. I think I have plenty of insight into the female psyche. Thank you. Now, will you admit that your book is dated and that I have more game than you?
And yet he still winds up with her. What's up with that? Do they perhaps both change as the seasons go on and gradually become closer as friends and more understanding of each other's nuances until the tension breaks into something that reasonably overshadows their previous expectations? No, they don't. The Shules dynamic was framed in some ways like they're a friends-to-lover situation, or, like they're somehow soulmates.
I think that everybody who's looking for a soulmate may at one time feel that there are outside forces conspiring against them.
But by definition, they were not. It was not mutual. It was totally one-sided. It's frankly a textbook example of the trope where a man pursues a woman to the degree that he repeatedly pushes past her boundaries and even outright rejections until she finally caves. Shawn flirts at her with no indicated response that she's actually into it, and often at very inappropriate times.
Now it's 2:30 in the morning. We've been here for hours. Enough with the jokes. Stop delaying and tell us what we want to hear.
Oh my God, that was so hot. That level of pinpoint marksmanship from you is easily one of the sexiest things that I've ever...
Shawn. Shh.
Okay.
Shawn asks her out on multiple occasions, even though he keeps getting a no, and even arranges dates without asking at all, thus putting her in that tight spot where she would feel rude if she said no, even though she had no part in him deciding to do that.
This will be a couples skate. Couples only.
Shawn. No hands.
Shawn acts entitled to her in a romantic context to the point that he thinks that he needs to give her permission to date someone else, even though he's not dating her himself.
Shawn, get back in the car.
Go out with Luntz.
What?
I want you to go out with Luntz.
Shawn, what are you trying to pull?
I'm not trying to pull anything. I just want you to be happy.
He often just straight up acts like they're already together, while Juliet remains oblivious or embarrassed by those implications.
Blow this case wide open. Marry me, Juliet.
Wow. This is exactly what I need to get into the holiday spirit before my family arrives.
Oh. Should I meet him, or is it too soon?
Too soon for what?
Nothing. And I love you. Metaphorically. What? You had your shot. Let me do what I do. You're gonna take his side. I can't believe this.
I'm just saying it's a little inappropriate.
Don't worry, it was way before I knew you.
Well, why would that matter?
It might.
It doesn't.
It could.
It won't.
Shawn even makes advances that could be genuinely considered sexual harassment, like this.
That's what friends are for.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long day. Shawn, what are you doing?
Nothing.
Really? Because if you're doing what it looks like you're doing, it's going to be one of those things we were just talking about.
What's that?
A mistake.
I agree, but...
For him to pursue her in that way, it's clear that in Shawn's eyes, they were never exclusively friends to begin with. Everything friendly that he did with the intent that it would lead to some kind of romance, often literally to the degree of manipulation. Just look at the extremely performative way he had to tell her that he really wanted her to be happy, and Gus walks into a bank.
I just want you to be happy. So, if you think this guy can make you happy, or even if you're not sure, and there's just a tiny part of you that thinks that there might be a chance for that, I think you owe it to yourself to go for it.
If he really wanted that, he could have just shut up and apologized later. And he could have not purposely sabotaged her date with Luntz. What he obviously actually wanted out of that whole little speech was for her to realize that he was being mature by sacrificing his own happiness, and therefore that he was the better choice than Luntz.
When are you supposed to go out next?
Tonight.
Wow,
Actually.
that's so fast.
Also, look at the fact that for the duration of the time that he's dating Abigail, he barely interacts with Juliet at all. And when he does, it's overtly romantic even then, thus totally mistreating both Juliet and Abigail. Like, the completely out of character and all around nonsensical scene at the end of Season 3 when the SPPD has just caught Santa Barbara's most notorious serial killer ever, and for some reason, instead of being at the station, Juliet has stayed behind to ask out Shawn, who has literally just dealt with the trauma of his mom almost being killed. Literally, why would Juliet O'Hara of all people do that? And like Shawn taking Juliet through the date that he had arranged for him and Abigail, and then telling Juliet that she means too much to him to let things be weird, and that he could keep things platonic, and then not actually following up with that.
But how?
And Shawn literally saying, "This?"
Cam, don't be so naive. Men and women can't be friends.
When Harry met Sally taught us that.
Thus basically telling Juliet to her face, "I've never thought of you as a friend, but only a potential girlfriend, lol." And Shawn being openly jealous about Juliet fake dating Raj in Bollywood Homicide, even though Abigail is right there. And the whole phone call scene, and Shawn takes a shot in the dark with the "I love you" fake out, which doesn't even make sense, because why would Shawn try to give the hints of where he was being held hostage to Juliet instead of Lassie, or even Henry, who were the people who would actually have understood those hints, and thus been able to find him faster? And the fact that in the Season 4 finale, when Abigail comes back to visit, Yin kidnaps both her and Juliet, which both in-universe and metatextually pits them against each other, and which is also the second time this season that Juliet has actually come close to death for the sake of the Shules arc, so, two birds with one misogynistic stone, huh? I want to take a breather for a second and say that I really do, honestly, like Abigail, and I also think that Shabigail as a relationship can actually be pretty cute at times, and maybe that's partially because their relationship's so brief and not endgame, aka the writers didn't have time to fuck it up. But also, unlike Juliet, Abigail actually gets to have opinions outside of what is convenient for Shawn, and she even gets to ultimately reject him, even though she does really like him. The relationship obviously still could have been handled a lot better, like she could have, you know, not been such an overt tool in the arc, and she could have actually been present in all of the episodes throughout which she and Shawn were together. But, yeah, back to the main point. Flat out, whether he personally realizes it in-universe or not, Shawn does not respect Juliet as a person independent of himself for the duration of the show. Because, like many men, honestly, he's been socialized to not respect women in general. But it's worse than that. He makes a game out of flirting at women, at Juliet, and at seeing if women will take more to him or to Gus. And that is exactly what his thing with Juliet really is up until the later seasons. It's just a game that turns into an emotional attachment. And I don't think I should have to explain why that's just plain shitty. But the worst part about this trope in general, and particularly here, quite frankly, is that Juliet ultimately seems okay with all of it. She rebuffs him, but only passively. She doesn't say no, but she doesn't say yes, either. Best case scenario, she reacts the way that she reacts to him, which is either neutral or positively, because she's a dumbass. Which, if we're really supposed to believe that, along with everything else about her character,
I don't buy into this whole husband and kids thing. Marriage is just a contractual obligation that the state mandated centuries ago when wives were considered property.
is bullshit. And at the same time, it's much better than the alternative, which is to believe that she only reacts well to Shawn's shit because she's afraid of what Shawn will do if she doesn't. The good thing is, we don't actually have to believe either. We can just chalk it up to bad, unrealistic writing and the fact that all of the writers are men who don't know that no woman in her right mind would tolerate that kind of behavior, let alone be attracted to it. But the fact remains that this misogynistic writing, the notion that women are prizes to be won...
All I know is that I don't want to miss out on the prize.
And that women are supposed to play hard to get, and therefore that women's boundaries don't matter, and that ultimately a man being happy is what matters most, and therefore he deserves to have any woman that he loves enough to make even the tiniest sacrifices for. All that bullshit is embedded in the Shules dynamic, which is, to reiterate, guy aggressively pursues girl until she caves. A dynamic that, if not overtly abusive, can only exist within the fantasy of fiction created exclusively by men. The fantasy where women only have opinions and a personality when it is convenient to men who like her. And that about concludes this first section of the essay. To summarize so far, Shawn and Juliet's romance relies on heteronormative and misogynistic expectations. Without those, no one would think for 1 second that they should be together. Now, onto, it's just a plain bad relationship.
God, I used to be a detective, now I'm a babysitter.
Makes you Elizabeth's shoe.
Juliet has a problem, and as the man, it's my job to fix it. I don't think that's what it means. Gus, there are certain things about women that no one in the world understands, except for me and NBC anchor Brian Williams. When a woman complains about a personal issue, she doesn't want the man to just listen. She wants him to solve the problem. I don't think that's right, Shawn.
That feels very real to me.
That is cheating, right?
Absolutely. I have a girlfriend, and things are going really well. And we flip it around when the lights are down 3-4 times a week, sometimes 5, depending on our caseload.
What?
Rodney Caruso and his smoking hot girlfriend, Scarlett Jones. Oh, come on, I can say that about women from other centuries.
Rodney Caruso was a cold-blooded killer, Shawn.
And I bet I would have made one hell of a capo.
Hey, I'm in new clothes, because I'm filming this a couple days later. Anyway, I started off this section of the essay with those clips because I felt they were a good transition between the heteronormativity and the unhealthy relationships. And also because I thought I should get the least of the problems with their actual relationship out of the way first. Juliet has to act more like a mother than a partner at times, there's a lack of communication and understanding between them based solely on gender, Shawn's still objectifying her, there's trust issues, blah blah blah. You've all seen it in pretty much every straight romance on television ever. It's pretty basic as far as unhealthy relationships go. Still bad. You shouldn't want to be in a relationship like that, but it's absolutely nothing compared to the actual meat of this section, which is gonna be a doozy. Because, damn it, even if you wanted to rationalize every last example of misogyny that I just gave as being more nuanced, or to give Shawn the benefit of the doubt that he didn't know how gross he was being, or even if you feel like the inconsistent characterization means that you're allowed to just ignore how awful Shawn sometimes treats Juliet anyway, or fuck, even if you want to actually accept the notion that Juliet is just sometimes a dumbass with no self-respect, he lied to her about being a psychic for the entire time that he pursued her, and 2 whole years into their relationship. I kind of want to end the essay right here. I feel like I shouldn't have to go deeper into that. God, what? I'm honestly nauseous. I feel sick to my fucking stomach. Hold on a second. God. I'm drinking water. I almost never drink water. This makes me want to drink water. Anyway, I can already hear some of you saying, but Shawn lying about being a psychic is the whole premise of the show in the first place. What's so bad about him doing it to Juliet specifically? And I'll tell you what's bad about it, pal. A lot! First of all, making people believe that you're a psychic is a pretty big deal, interpersonally speaking. It's not like just lying about credentials that you don't have, or lying about aspects of your past. In the way that Shawn is doing it, which is claiming to have the ability to read thoughts and feelings, as well as to be able to communicate with the dead, that's a lie about his whole identity. He's claiming to have supernatural powers. He's even inadvertently claiming to be proof of an afterlife. And if you really believed that someone had the ability to read your mind, that would affect how you interact with them, wouldn't it? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Shawn is a bad person for doing the whole fake psychic lie in the first place. Keeping up the psychic lie to Juliet as a member of the SBPD in order to protect his job, protect himself, and keep from going to jail, as well as to be able to continue to solve crimes and do good things, yeah, that makes sense, of course, whatever. It's morally gray at the worst. Keeping up that kind of lie to Juliet to someone whom he's pursuing a romantic relationship with, however, is another thing entirely. Because with that, even any actual respectful advances he makes on her have that added layer. She believes this huge lie about his identity, and Shawn knows that Juliet believes it all the while that he's pursuing her, so there's deception in every move. Now, if Shawn clearly didn't like keeping that big secret from her, or if he'd made an effort to keep his psychic persona solely attached to detective work and as separate from his pursuit of Juliet as possible, or hell, even if you could chalk it all up to recklessness and he just had never thought about how his psychic persona would inform his relationship with Juliet at all, then it wouldn't be too bad. Unfortunately, none of that is true. It is too bad.
Libra, your one true love will be wearing sneakers and an Apple Jacks t-shirt. That's kind of a weird detail.
Phil! Investigate these nannies with me. Otherwise, Chi's gonna shrivel up and starve to death. You need to feed your Chi. Besides, I wasn't gonna say anything, but I had a vision of us being married. I know it's probably this undercover thing we're gonna do, but it might have been a vision from our future. Mr. and Mrs. Juliet Spencer O'Hara. Mr. Mittens says it felt just like going to sleep, and he doesn't hold it against you at all. Kitty heaven? It's just like East Beach.
That is the best news ever.
Merry Christmas. From both, Shawn.
Whoa. This is a very special gift that's clearly just for me. Don't appropriate. Not at Christmas time.
Thank you so much, Shawn.
'Tis the season, Jules.
Wow. This is exactly what I need.
So, yeah. That's a lot of displays of psychicness that he definitely does not have to do, but he does it anyway, to consciously take advantage of her naivety and to manipulate situations into becoming romantic. And you know, that last one could have just been a genuinely nice gift, but instead he was obviously using Juliet's childhood trauma to speed a romance along. And now I want to barf. There are probably some of you watching just for funsies and you haven't actually watched Psych, and you're probably thinking at this point, well damn, it probably can't get much worse, right? Let's fast forward to mid-season 5, where the Shules arc culminates over the course of 3 episodes. After all that we've been through so far, this about Juliet is established.
You're right about one thing. There's nothing I value more than honesty. And it does really bother me that you would lie like that, but I'm also just blown away that you could be just so forthcoming.
And the tragically funny thing is, for pretty much this whole episode, Shawn had actually finally been gearing up to tell her the truth. Until Declan does it first. Who cares about honesty if she's not gonna fuck you anyway, am I right? Ooh, but then, at the end of the next episode, Shawn does a big ol' speech at Declan's house, and Shawn and Juliet kiss, even though she's dating Declan, and through none of it does Shawn try to tell her the truth.
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you, Jules.
Nor does he do so at the end of the next episode when they get together for real. It's like he just completely forgot that honesty is important to her. Or, let's be real, he decided that the possibility of her deciding not to date him was worse than him continuing to actively deceive her. Which he continues to do, unhesitatingly, for the next 2 years. Well, maybe it was just too easy to put it out of his mind for all that time and too hard to get that conversation started, is something you might say. And you'd still be wrong! In the first episode of Season 6, Lassie is fucking pissed about the fact that Shawn and Juliet are dating, and for the first time in 5 whole years, he actually tries to prove that Shawn is a fraud and to get him fired. He hooks Shawn up to a lie detector and asks if he's a psychic, and Shawn visibly hesitates.
You're gonna have to answer that one, Shawn.
Of course, he's able to regulate his breathing and fool the lie detector, but for once, Juliet actually is suspicious.
Should we talk about what happened yesterday?
No, not really.
But the fact that Juliet still doesn't know that Shawn is psychic for another season and a half means one of two things. One, Shawn purposely avoided actually talking about it. Or two, Shawn purposely made up even more lies. Both of those are bad. 6 episodes later, we, and Shawn, learn that Juliet hates her estranged father. And even though he, of all people, should understand with a dad like Henry Spencer, he goes directly against her wishes and tracks down her dad to bring to her 30th birthday party.
You did what?
He arranged the whole thing.
I specifically said that I didn't want him here, and I meant it, Shawn.
Yeah, but I thought you wanted me to do the exact opposite of that.
Why would you think that?
Because I know women.
Do you have any idea how completely inappropriate it is that you went behind my back and invited him here?
Yeah, but I only did all of this to show you that you were completely wrong.
And then he learns that Juliet's father is a con man, and that the reason she hates him is because he's a liar and a cheat.
Because I feel cheated. I feel robbed. So congratulations, Frank. Your longest con of all was on your own daughter.
So, just to reiterate, Shawn has just been reminded that Juliet has serious issues with being lied to. He has just learned the actual childhood trauma-related reasons for those issues. He should now be completely aware of exactly how fucked up it is of him to still be keeping up the psychic lie. Yeah, there's still another year to go before she finds out. And she does so by complete accident with absolutely no indication that Shawn was planning on coming clean anytime soon. I really love Shawn, I do, but how little respect do you have to have for someone that you supposedly love to betray their trust so consistently and for so long like that? And not just that, but to consciously maintain this horrible power imbalance where they literally believe that you have the power to read their mind? Jesus fucking Christ. Also, here's something that a lot of people probably don't think about. For the psychic lie to be maintained, Shawn must have kept quite a lot of other information from her too. Like his whole childhood, which was all the training from Henry that he now uses to fake being a psychic, and just details about either of his parents in general, and even just how smart he actually is. Unless, of course, you want to believe that Juliet is stupid, which I won't. But anyway, never mind the willful deception for a minute. As long as Juliet believes that Shawn is psychic, she barely knows a goddamn thing about him. That's a bad relationship, dude. Okay, after all that, I bet that those of you who aren't familiar with Psych are probably thinking something like, wow, Shawn just sounds like a horrible person and the worst boyfriend. But surely it wouldn't have made a difference if he dated anyone else on the show, right? He must be lying to everyone like this. Wrong again! Juliet is, in fact, the only member of the main cast who actually genuinely believes that Shawn is psychic. Gus has been Shawn's best friend forever and also works with him, so helps him keep the lie. Obviously, Shawn's dad knows the truth. Chief Vic is heavily implied to know the truth and just not care as long as Shawn's stopping crime, and Lassiter is openly skeptical from the very beginning. The only other prominent character who believes he's psychic is McNabb, and Shawn's canonical relationship with him is almost non-existent. So, yeah, that makes it all even worse. Like, shit, dude, in-universe it kinda makes it seem like Shawn purposely pursued someone that he knew he could emotionally take advantage of.
Well, I trust with my heart, and I can't avoid believing.
And then, metatextually speaking, it's just the worst thing that he would be paired with the one person who believed his lie? But more on that later. I still have more in-universe bullshit to get through. Season 7, Episode 7. Lassiter and Marlowe get married, but before they do, Marlowe gets kidnapped. Shawn finds her through a particularly spectacular vision. Later, Juliet finds a hotel receipt that leads her to be suspicious that Shawn's visions were actually visions at all. And finally, the cat is out of the bag. Never mind how weirdly mundane the thing that finally tips Juliet off is. Here's the good thing. She's pissed. She finally gets to be angry and to feel betrayed and to react realistically to Shawn's bullshit, which is to say, to not tolerate it. At least, for a little bit. Here's a rundown of the events related to the relationship in the following episodes. In Right Turn or Left 4 Dead, Shawn low-key goes into a dissociative state over how badly he screwed up, and Juliet temporarily breaks up with him and kicks him out of the apartment. In Juliet Wears the Pantsuit, Shawn once again just pushes tons of Juliet's boundaries by not leaving her the fuck alone like she wants. In Santa Barbarian Candidate, Shawn runs for mayor as part of going undercover for a case, and he puts Juliet in the horribly uncomfortable position of being his date for this political gala. And God, probably the most blatant display of emotional manipulation yet, as he takes a horribly vulnerable Juliet and dances with her to Mazzy Star's Fade Into You, which, by the way, had to be a song that Shawn chose on purpose to fuck with her feelings, because the lyrics in that song do not fit their relationship at all. They describe a relationship where at least one or both parties were unaware that the other had strong feelings for them for a long time, which ain't them, Chief. In Office Space, the episode starts out with Shawn in Juliet's bed, because I guess they had sex even though they're still broken up, because...
We're adults.
Right.
It happens.
Right.
Does it, though? Because I have a really hard time believing that. If it does happen, it must be a straight people thing that I don't know about, but either way, I have an especially hard time imagining what events possibly could have led up to them having sex, considering the emotional state that Juliet is in, and I would imagine that Juliet, of all people, would keep her pussy from affecting her brain. But whatever, I guess. In Dead Air, Shawn, repeatedly tells Juliet that if she ever became disabled or a vegetable, that he would take care of her, which at best is a really fucking weird way of him trying to convince her that he's a good guy. That's all I gotta say about that. And finally, episode 13 of season 7, Nip and Suck It. Shawn and Juliet interact almost not at all for the whole episode. And then at the very end, Shawn swoops in and says,
I've got huge news. Jules and I are back together again, officially. She made me work for it, but I came all the way back. She couldn't resist this forever.
Literally, that's how that's resolved. Unless we're just supposed to believe as an audience that a lot happened off-screen, even though there's no mention of it, Shawn has done absolutely nothing to atone for what he's done. We don't even get a scene of Juliet forgiving him. It's a throwaway line at the end of an episode where they didn't even interact. And for the whole arc, so much of the deep, deep deception and betrayal isn't even acknowledged. Like, all of the very purposeful lies that built their dynamic.
Are you telling me this is all a lie?
Like, nah, it wasn't a lie, it was a million fucking lies. I've already gone into depth about how Juliet is written super unrealistically because she's written by men, so I want to keep any more meta of that to a minimum, but holy fuck, man. The absolute disrespect of her character and her values, am I right, ladies? I just swallowed a piece of ice. Ugh. Hoo boy! I think I'm done with that section. To summarize, their entire relationship is based on a lie. Shawn added many more lies on purpose. Juliet, in fact, barely knows anything about him, and the continued existence of their relationship relies on Juliet being dumbed down and having barely any agency of her own. I should do an intermission. It's 1 in the morning of the day after I filmed all of that, and I've just finished editing it all together and putting all the clips in and everything. Oh, God. I've made myself watch so much today. I'm so stressed out. Literally, I have stress acne from doing this. Granted, I have anxiety, like, really bad, so I get stressed about a lot of things, but I drink so much water, even. And you know that's supposed to be, like, good for your skin, so you don't get acne and stuff. So, like, what the fuck? Ugh, I'm so brave. I've done so much for this community, and the video's probably not even going to be able to be monetized because of the music and the clips and everything. And not that I intended to get it monetized by making it in the first place. I really genuinely just wanted to get all my thoughts about it into one place so I could feel satisfied that the manifesto was there and that any person can look at it and I can just direct any person to it and I don't have to, like, link them to a million separate posts. But I'm really probably not gonna get much out of this, except probably a bunch of straight people, like, claiming I'm heterophobic or something, which I'm gonna get anyway, just for existing as a gay person, but it's satisfying to put it together, but it is very stressful, and I deserve so much. I honestly wanted this intermission to just be me screaming, because frankly I deserve it after watching all of the scenes that you just saw, except more of it. I had to actually watch the full thing, and with the audio, but I couldn't find anywhere to scream. I'd wake up my whole family and everything if they try to scream in the house. I have a big backyard, but I also don't want to get the cops called on me. Honestly, I'm probably gonna have to do some kind of chassis video essay just to make up for the sheer stress that I've put myself through. Just make something completely happy just about stuff that I actually love instead of spending several days editing something that surrounds something I hate. Not that I don't enjoy hating things. Hate fuels me, and I don't think that makes me a bad person. We all need to unabashedly hate things sometimes, especially when those things deserve to be hated. God, and I still have the whole third part to film. I've written it all so far. I have outlined everything. But, it's gonna be a few more days until I can even finish editing it even. Well, I hope you enjoyed this glimpse into more of my personal life than just my thoughts on this topic. I hope you enjoyed watching me eat a pineapple. I have another intermission coming up. This second intermission is because there is another pretty unhealthy thing about the relationship that didn't really fit with the whole topic of deception. And it's not unforgivably toxic or anything, but as long as I'm here, I think it's worth mentioning. So, the events that officially culminated the Shules arc and got them together were quite literally sparked by Shawn going through a depressive and dissociative spell.
There's a reason those books have sold almost 30 million copies, Gus.
Mostly to teenage girls.
And adult males who enjoy reading stories about vampire doctors and their dysfunctional dating lives.
You said you were going to the office last night to catch up on work.
Wish I did. Then I saw those beers in the fridge.
Our fridge doesn't work.
Yes, 7-Eleven's does.
Chase suffers from depersonalization disorder, characterized by feeling detached from one's mental or emotional process. He's currently going through the motions of life without experiencing them. It's as if he were a character in a movie.
And to be honest, that fact kind of makes some of his behavior seem a little sympathetic, or at least makes it make sense as a mentally ill person myself. Like, he's already very lonely in general due to the depression, which is likely exacerbated by the alcohol, and then it's made even worse by the arrival of Declan, who is the objectively better version of himself. And then Juliet is the one nearby person whom he had any confidence in as a romantic option, so as the better version of himself starts dating her, it gets even worse from there. And then, in the next episode, the thing that actually tips Juliet off to Shawn's supposed real feelings is that she accidentally eavesdrops on him saying this.
You think I don't want her to be happy? I want her to be happy. But... a serious Shawn moment here. I want to be happy too. And for some reason, I can't imagine that happening without Juliet. How crazy is that?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
And then things set in motion from there. The point is, it's honestly kind of hilarious that they would officially get together due to some impulsive decisions that Shawn made while canonically not in his right mind. Like, sad for Shawn, but one hell of a cell phone for the Psych writers. It doesn't make any sense for Shules to exist at all, let alone the endgame. This final section of the essay is going to be a lot less about how awful their relationship is in-universe and why you shouldn't ship it, and more about how awfully the relationship fits into Psych as a story. Basically, even entirely outside of the heteronormativity and the lies and the manipulation, the entire presence of the relationship is just bad writing. Let's start small. What's the thing that any good, entertaining, fictional romance should have? Chemistry. The closest thing that Shawn and Juliet have to that is that sometimes he'll tell a joke and she'll laugh, which is just a given because Shawn is funny. Shawn is constantly doing bits, and the especially funny thing is that Juliet is almost never actually a participant in them. Sometimes she doesn't even laugh, but just shuts down the bit, without a hint of irony.
Jules, that's your cue to cackle.
Shawn, I don't have a cackle in my repertoire.
Well, I guess you have to get home and feed your parrot.
Shawn, I don't have a parrot.
They don't have banter at all, either. Shawn just sometimes mansplains very simple things to her, and she listens with some degree of amusement.
They plump when you cook them.
They plump.
Literally. As the temperature rises, the wiener absorbs all additional moisture, causing it to double, sometimes even triple in diameter.
Oh, wow.
Combos, different story. They are both pretzels and cheese, and if you get one without cheese, that means the bag is haunted.
And Okay, I lied. Sometimes they do have banter, and it sounds like this.
Okay, what are you wearing?
What? You said you were on a case and there were possible criminal suspects down here that might get spooked by cops snooping around.
Yeah, but what are you wearing? This is a reunion, not the prom. I need you to fit in.
What, this? This isn't a prom dress.
It looks like a prom dress. It's a little poofy.
It doesn't poof. There's no poof.
A slight poof.
There's no poof. If anything, it's a crinkle.
I'm not sold on crinkle.
Look, it's what I was going to wear to my high school reunion that I couldn't go to because I was on a case.
Jules.
Just show me where these suspects are that I need to vet.
I don't know if I need you to vet anything, but let's poof on in there. I'll point them out to you.
I thought we agreed it's a crinkle.
You might not have ever actually seen that full scene, though, because it's, in fact, a deleted scene. And there are a lot of other deleted scenes in the episode that come together as a whole Juliet-centric B-plot that just didn't make it into the final cut, because I guess what we really needed was to watch 2 full minutes of Henry being awkward on the phone. I have the B-plot compiled, though, and I'll link to it right here so you can go watch it right now if you want. And literally, at least in my opinion, that Lost B-plot has the best SeanJuliet interaction in the whole show. Hands down. Minus the really weird banter right there. But they actually acted like friends. Shawn actually learned a lesson and stopped being a jerk, and made up for it by doing a really nice thing that didn't just look like him trying to get into Juliet's pants. I can honestly only assume that the reason they didn't keep it in was because it established trust issues on Juliet's end over having been stood up at prom, and standing someone up is something that Shawn has done before that Juliet has a problem with, and they didn't want to make it too obvious how actually incompatible they were so early on. Except they did plenty of that later anyway. So, not only do they lack chemistry, though, they're honestly barely compatible as any kind of partnership.
It's over.
I understand. It was fun while it lasted.
No, it wasn't.
We made a great team.
No, we didn't. It was a disaster. Partners don't lie to one another, and partners don't run off mid-investigation, and partners do not go through my purse, find my phone, and text photos of my dog to every guy in my address book with the caption, "This is you."
The biggest thing they have in common by far, other than what every character in the show has in common, caring about justice, is that they like some of the same movies, but even then...
Oh my Gushin. That is an exact replica of Kelly McGillis' leather jacket from Top Gun.
I can wear it tonight.
How about I wear it tonight? That's weird.
Yeah.
You wear it tonight.
I'll wear it.
Sorry.
They're just not on the same wavelength. When it comes to the Psych writers also very often break one of the huge rules of good storytelling: show, don't tell. It all ties into what I mentioned earlier about writers putting in a lot less effort to sell the idea of het romance. They don't think they actually need to show that much on-screen development between them, so instead they just kind of say that it happened and expect us to believe it. And not only do they do a bunch of telling instead of showing, a lot of it is just outright lying. Because they'll have either Shawn and Juliet claim that the dynamic was something that it just obviously wasn't, like...
I know that things between us have been a little complicated. And that there have probably been some mixed signals, mostly from me.
God, first of all, even if it has been complicated, there's no good reason for it to have been complicated. Like, that implies that, what, she's been repeatedly rejecting him for reasons that she doesn't even know? Or, like, that something else has been forcing her to reject him, and, like, it hasn't been her decision every time to continuously reject him? And second of all, mixed signals are not a thing. It's the whole idea of, well, her mouth is saying no, but her body is saying yes kind of bullshit, and that's gross. Also, Juliet is obviously a feminist, so she, of all people, should know that repeatedly rejecting someone is by far from a mixed signal. That's a pretty straightforward signal.
Falling in love with you was never part of the plan, okay?
I can chalk this one up to Shawn just lying as a person as opposed to a tool of the narrative, because he is trying to defend himself and save his ass in general right here, but do I really need to explain why that obviously isn't true? As a writer, from a storytelling perspective, this one is just the fucking worst. There's no good reason to have remade that episode of all episodes to begin with. And then they took out, like, pretty much everything that made the episode good, like all the good Shawn Lasseter development, and put in some that literally wasn't even in character for the time period. Shawn wasn't even saying things like that to her in Season 1. It's completely shoehorned in. They just tried to retroactively, oh yeah, we were on the path all along. You weren't. Along that vein, there's also some more subtle lying that they actually have. That is, not with words, but with framing. You know, where the content of a scene might not actually contribute much, if at all, to romantic development, but with the way that it's filmed and edited, the audience is clearly supposed to think that it does.
Jules, I was just messing around. I copied your card over your shoulder, like verbatim. Well, you thought maybe I sew my own pajamas? That's
Right, okay. Well, good, because I don't want there to be any weirdness between us.
Shawn has purposefully copied Juliet's sheet, and I guess we're supposed to see it as romantic, even though it just indicates they don't actually have much in common. But here's one of the dumbest and laziest ones.
But why didn't you tell anybody?
I did. She knew just what to do with it. Oh, sorry, Jules.
Doesn't matter what happened.
Yeah, she knew what to do with Shawn's note because it was obvious, and because she's a detective. It's so fucking weird that this is framed like it's something special about Juliet, or like it's based on some personal connection they have, when it's literally just, yeah, she's a detective. Also, I really have to mention the fact that there are multiple occasions where a scene will slot in at the end of an episode that was extremely chassis-centric, almost like they're purposely trying to make you forget that everything was gay a minute ago. Like in Lassie Did a Bad Thing, which is one of the most chassis episodes. At the very end, for absolutely no reason, there's just...
No chatting up. You promise, Shawn.
Like, that's just the most thematically irrelevant possible thing you could have done. Similarly, the fact that the scene where Shawn and Juliet officially get together happens at the end of an episode that was extremely homoerotic between Shawn and Despero the whole time.
Now, I want to pose a question to you, Shawn, and I want you to consider it sincerely.
Shoot.
Lunch, Friday.
I'll visit you in prison.
I'd schedule that sooner than later.
I don't know about you, but for me, that sends a pretty clear message that Shawn and Juliet's relationship is just an afterthought, which is a good transition into my next point about why it just plain doesn't belong in the show. The theme song. Titled The Best Man Lies, and written by the co-creators of Psych, Steve Franks and Tim Meltreger, the literal theme song to the show fits pretty much everything but. Here's the first verse and the chorus, which are present at the beginning of every episode.
In between the lines, there's a lot of obscurity. I'm not inclined to resign to maturity. If it's alright, then you're all wrong. But why bounce around to the same damn song? You'd rather run when you can't crawl. I know, you know, that I'm not telling the truth. I know, you know, they just don't have any proof. It's a deception. Learn how to bend your worst inhibitions, then psych you out in the end.
For the most part, it's pretty clearly from the point of view of Shawn talking to Gus, who is at first reluctant to join him in the fake psychic business. You probably don't need me to tell you this, but it's all basically saying, why self-monotony, why try to be an adult, why worry so much about telling the whole truth, we're doing good work and this is fun. It can also be pretty easily applied to Lassiter, who, similar to Gus, is living monotonously and doesn't immediately take well to Shawn's shenanigans. It especially fits Lassiter with the main lyric, I know you know that I'm not telling the truth. In fact, that particular line makes more sense directed at him than at Gus, because why would Shawn ever need to say it to Gus? If you wanted, you could stretch it to Shawn addressing even Henry and Chief Vic, but it would seriously be one hell of a stretch to try to apply it to Juliet. First of all, for the vast majority of the show, Juliet does not know that Shawn isn't telling the truth. Like I've already established, she's the only one who doesn't. She also has far fewer inhibitions that keep her from bending the rules for Shawn than other characters do, so I guess if you really wanted to, you could interpret embrace the deception as get over the fact that I purposely deceived you and you alone for 7 years. But that'd be kinda fucked up, wouldn't it? Now let's get into the next verse for some forbidden Psych lore.
In the realm of compliments there isn't any higher than a fabricated misdirection fashioned by a liar. You think you hate all that you love, acting so surprised when it fits you like a glove.
I will say that first half just sounds like narcissism and cynicism. The most flattering compliments are going to come from a liar trying to distract you from the truth, so sure, apply that to Juliet if you want. Still kind of fucked up, in my humble opinion, but anyway. The real kicker is the second half, which, once again, because Juliet pretty unhesitatingly believes in his psychicness and quickly gets on board with him, you think you hate all that you love? You're surprised that you're having fun and that the psychic shtick is working? That ain't at her. That's Lassie. And Gus, but honestly to a far lesser extent than how much it makes sense addressed at Lassiter. One more verse.
Wanna find the answers and offer a solution. Happy one has got it, though, so help me disillusion. If it's a game they wanna play, you better load the dice, 'cause we'll do it anyway.
Shawn is partially able to function the way that he does, both in regards to how he solves cases and just in general, because he sees past the mundane lies of everyday life, and these socially expected walls that people put up, aka his healthy disillusion. He doesn't bother to follow a lot of social rules because, ironically, he can tell that they're all lies, and he doesn't see the point when he's always lying in an entirely different sort of way anyway. He's shameless and impolite, and he's not at all worried about making a fool of himself, and that's his solution. Life's a game, and he's always cheating to win, loading the dice, because he knows that if he doesn't do it first, then someone else will. This last verse is Shawn's advice to people around him in general, but specifically the SBPD. They're the ones who want to find the answers. But the reason that he can't be addressing Juliet here is that the verse acknowledges the deception, like it's something that both the speaker and the addressee know about. It's saying, listen, if you're seeking justice and truth, then sometimes playing by the rules isn't the best idea. And sure, Juliet is aware that Shawn goes against the rules a lot, but once again, unlike other characters, she doesn't actually have to take time to be convinced that his methods are good, because she just believes that he's following a psychic whim or something. I want to be clear, this is obviously far from my biggest beef with the writing of I just think it's pretty interesting since, you know, a theme song is supposed to lay out the central themes of a show, and for the main endgame romance to be the one relationship the main character has that fits into those themes the least, if at all, needless to say, is another hilarious self-own. But now, here is my biggest beef with the way that fits into the overall story. Shawn and Juliet aren't even the only ones who get mistreated as characters in the process. Not only are Juliet's reactions to Shawn unrealistic and inconsistent with the rest of her character, but other characters are also inconsistently characterized just to push the arc forward. Mostly Gus. One of Gus's primary character traits is how he interacts with women. In Shawn's words,
every time you see a marginally cute girl, you lose all semblance of reason.
I don't do that.
Just like you don't flick your nose with your thumb when you're trying to act cool.
This is consistent for the entire show. except in regards to Juliet. Even though there's no good reason at all that Gus wouldn't be into Juliet, considering...
So, how's the convention? A lot of cool stuff going on, I bet.
Oh, come on, not you too. You're a collector too?
Since middle school.
I just got Hilt's coolest autograph.
Shut up, you did not.
Yes, I did. Hi. Hi. So after...
I can't believe poor Shabby is dead.
You too, Jules?
Shawn, the Shabby Cam is my screensaver. We can all learn from him. Oh, I used to have one of these with Wonder Woman's face on it.
Me too.
Even with very little actual on-screen bonding between them, Gus is easily far more compatible with Juliet than Shawn is. They're both the stable, more compassionate ones of their respective partnerships. They have the same values and emotional maturity, and they care about the same things. But the notion of them dating is never even presented as a possibility, and that is a straight-up crime. Also, remember that little speech that Juliet eavesdrops on that sparks their romance into action? The only reason that Shawn was even saying that stuff is because, first, Gus said this.
No, I'm hung up on the fact that you've been obsessed with this woman this whole time. She makes the ultimate move on you. You shut her down? What's wrong with you? That makes no sense. Are you crazy?
Which doesn't make any fucking sense. Gus is Shawn's best friend. Why on earth would he be confused that Shawn didn't abandon him and everyone else in Santa Barbara just to run off to the Amalfi Coast with a sexy lady? What? Just another example of his whole personality having to change for the sake of the Shules arc, LMAO. Worse yet, Gus doesn't even end up in a relationship by the end of the show. I'm not counting the movie because it came out 3 years later, but his longest lasting girlfriend is there for 5 episodes. He's the only main character to not have an endgame romance, and with him also being the only black character, it's pretty fucked up. But I digress. And then there's Lassiter. He hates that they're together, and he's happy when they break up. I could do a whole nother video essay about all the reasons behind that, but regardless of what they are, the fact is that one of the main 4 characters of Psych absolutely despises The very same main character goes on 2 episodes after finding out that Shawn and Juliet are dating, and 6 whole seasons into the show, to get a shoehorned romance of his own with similarly gross heteronormativity embedded into it. I could probably also make a whole separate video essay about why Lassie and Marlowe as a thing is bad, but the key points are obvious. He meets her at a time when he's literally lonely and depressed out of his mind. Psych seems to have a theme with that. He has no more than a few hours of interaction with her before she goes to prison, and after she gets out of prison 6 months later, he only spends a week with her before deciding to get married for the express purpose of being able to legally live together. The relationship is founded on nothing except a bunch of impulsive decisions that are only in character if you ascribe them to mental illness. It's basically a result of the writers not thinking about Lassiter's happiness until the show was almost over. Plus, the fact that after the first episode she's in, Marlowe has minimal screen time and literally has no character other than being Lassiter's girlfriend and wife. Oh, and then she gets pregnant, which adds an extra layer of commitment, and ultimately results in Lassiter staying behind in Santa Barbara at the end of the show, while the other 3 main characters leave. Yeah, full offense, a show ending with the main cast being split up like that? Bad! And sure, Shules wasn't the only thing that created that chain of events. It wasn't the only thing that left Gus without a romance and left Lassiter making all the same mistakes that he'd already made before the show started. But even if Gus had been given a good girlfriend, and even if Lassiter's marriage wasn't doomed, adding extra characters that late in the show still would have felt weird. Not inherently bad if done well, but just look at the established main cast. 4 main characters, 2 partnerships, Shawn and Gus, Lassiter and Juliet. Both of those partnerships can be boiled down to neurotic asshole weirdo with a heart of gold, and they're technically lower in rank, but ultimately equal partner, beacon of compassion and stability. Do I really have to even say it? Put the assholes together, damn it! Don't make Juliet, who's probably the nicest and most patient person on Earth, have to spend all of her time with two separate assholes? And that's not even getting into all the details of what makes Shawn and Lassiter so utterly compatible. They actually have chemistry. The dynamic is equal on both sides. There's no actual deception because Shawn knows that Lassiter does not believe in his psychicness from day one. He even knows relatively early on that Lassiter is okay with his whole psychic charade. They both change deeply because of each other, and they're canonically shown to understand things about each other that even their respective partners don't. Remember all that stuff that Juliet can't possibly know about Shawn because otherwise she'd have guessed the truth a lot sooner? Yeah, Lassiter knows that stuff about him by season goddamn 3.
He criticized my pole technique for like 3 hours. It's holding a pole in the water. What is there to criticize?
Hey, ease up. It's my pup you're talking about.
I'm beginning to understand you a little better, Spencer.
Well, I have a bit of, I guess you'd call it an eidetic tonal memory.
So you'll remember everything I've said.
Shawn knows, Lassiter knows, that he's not telling the truth. Shawn helps Lassiter learn how to bend, and Lassiter is the one who has the worst inhibitions. Juliet watches Shawn have a vision, and she tells him that was amazing because she believes it's magic. Lassiter watches Shawn solve the case, and he tells him, "Good work, Spencer," because he sees it for the work that it really was. Psych romantically paired its protagonist with the one person who always believed him, even when he was lying. Like that is a romantic thing. Even though the one person who always saw through Shawn's bullshit was right there. And even though with Shawn and Lassiter together, Gus and Juliet would have been the perfect match to follow. The core four would have been made of 4 interwoven pairs, and they would have all stayed together, and the show would have ended on perfect symmetry, and they would all have been happy. And Shules fucking ruined that! A lot of people at the end of an essay like this would probably backtrack a little and be like, but those are just my opinions, guys. You can ship whatever you want, like what you like, I can't stop you. I would never bash a person having an opinion or liking things, and that's the beauty of America. We can like whatever we want. But I'm not gonna do that. If you liked before you watched this essay, the nicest thing I have to say to you is that you were brainwashed by a heteronormative society, and/or you probably watched the show a long time ago, or whenever you did watch the show, you weren't paying enough attention to it. And if you still like Shules now, at the end of this essay, and you didn't skip ahead and you actually watched the whole thing, you're stupid as fuck, dude. If you even see chemistry there at all, you're almost definitely straight, and if by some miracle you're not straight, you are now, because I just took your gay card. You can reapply for one at the gay DMV in no less than 5 years. Also, if you skipped ahead, fuck you. There's just no good reason to like it. In order to do so, you either have to disregard facts, or to just not care that it's a relationship built on lies and overtly misogynistic ideas? What, you're just gonna be fine with the fact that one half of the relationship has to be horribly mistreated both as a person and a character for it to even work? But really, you know what? The individual audience members who enjoy their relationship aren't nearly as much of a problem as the people who wrote it that way. Yeah, it was written for the most part over a decade ago, but Psych was mainstream during its run, and was just added on to the huge pile of hundreds if not thousands of famous TV couples that sold the idea to the public that when it comes to romance between men and women, anything short of her yelling no in your face means yes.
I'm telling you, man, when they say one thing, what they want is for us to do the exact opposite.
And that men's feelings ultimately matter more than women's safety or autonomy.
All right, you know what, Jules? First of all, there are a lot of guys that blew it way worse than I did and got to keep their women, like Bill Clinton.
It's bad. And the Psych writers should feel bad. But if you're watching this, Steve Franks or Tim Meltrigger or anyone else who worked on Psych, you should also feel good. Because in spite of the horror show that was Juliet and Shawn's relationship, there's still enough good left in the show to have kept me invested for literally 4 years by now. You established the grounds for a very fun universe with a lot of very good characters. It almost feels like an RPG where the player character is Shawn and a lot of different paths easily could have been taken, but it just happened that whoever controlled Shawn this time around repeatedly made just the worst choices and cemented a bad timeline that feels way too dark compared to the initial premise. Honestly, one of the most heinous crimes at all is that you created the most obviously bi protagonist and gave him a gay detective soulmate and still forced the show to play out painfully straight. Okay, that was mostly a joke. I do understand that endgame chassis and by extension ghouls would have likely been too much to hope for during the show's run, but the potential for an absolutely perfect version of Psych is still there as far as I'm concerned, and that's why I genuinely, really want to reboot it. I have had the plans, the in-depth plans to do so for a long time. Steve Franks, if you're watching, get in touch with me. And to everyone else who's still watching, I really hope you had fun feeling my rage with me. If you went into this with little to no familiarity with Psych, just because you like watching people tear apart things you've never seen, honestly, please watch Psych. The fact that I love it in spite of all the things I just showed you should be evidence enough that it is a very good show. And if you went into this actually liking and you've now changed your mind, I firstly do want to actually commend you on having an open enough mind to click on this in the first place. And if you haven't changed your mind, you're on thin fucking ice. Anyway, if you have anything significant that I forgot to mention, or any counter-arguments you think I should have addressed but didn't, because I'm sure as thorough as this is, I probably forgot something, leave a comment and let me know, and if there's enough of them, then I might make another video to append to this essay. A much, much shorter one, though. Don't worry. Also, if anyone is interested in listening to me rant about other Psych-related topics, because that kind of feels like all I'm qualified to do now, please tell me. I feel like I'm pretty good at this. I really enjoyed making this, as much work and stress as it also was to put it together. And if you want to support the man-hours that went into this, I'll put a link to my Ko-fi in the description, and you could drop a donation there, maybe, if I get enough monetary support that pretty much guarantees more videos of this nature, so there's your incentive.
In between the lines, there's a lot of obscurity. I'm not inclined to resign to maturity. If it's alright, then you're all wrong.
Steve Franks, I'm serious. I just want to make your show the best version of itself that it can be, and also to play a young flashback of Lassiter in the reboot. Please just email me or something, please. I am begging you.